Hello everyone, Jules here. Today I'd like to talk about a tarot deck that is quite interesting, and that is the Grail Tarot by John Matthews, and it actually says here a Templar Vision as the subtitle, and this was published in 2007. And this is quite an interesting deck, and it's interesting for people who are interested in not only the Grail legend, but also for people who are interested in the Knights Templar. And it's also interesting for people who are interested in Gnosticism or Gnostic Christianity. And I am interested particularly in this deck because I'm becoming more interested in Gnostic Christianity, which is quite different to the usual conventional Christianity that most people know about. Gnostic Christianity has more mysticism, and it's also got a connection with alchemy to some extent as well. And I'm particularly interested in this because of the Gnostic and alchemical concepts in this deck, as well as the Grail legend. So here is the box. Here is the book. The book is very good, which is written by John Matthews, and the deck itself is illustrated by Giovanni Caselli, who was the artist who did the new Mythic Tarot, which I have and which I actually prefer because I like that art better than the original Mythic Tarot. So the art in the deck is quite beautifully done. The deck is very interesting. I'll show that in a moment. As for the book is really crucial to the deck. It's the kind of deck that you would most likely not be able to use without the book. And the reason for that is because all of the major arcana cards, the names have been changed. So that makes it more difficult. And the scenery on the cards is quite different to most conventional tarots. So you really do need the book. And of course the book is very, very well written because it's written by John Matthews, and he's really a Grail legend expert. And there are some really interesting spreads in the back of the book. So this is a great book, and it explains all of the concepts in the deck. But as I was saying, you absolutely need this book for the deck, and it does come as a set anyway. So here is the book, and I'm going to show some of the cards that I particularly like. The cards have a matte finish and they don't have borders. It was one of the first decks that came without borders. Here is the back of the deck of the cards, and it has the seal of the Knight Templars on the back. And for anyone who doesn't know who the Knight Templars were, they were the knights from the early medieval times who were involved with the Crusades in the Middle Eastern countries. And I like this deck to find out more about some of the ideas that are associated with the Knight Templars. I'm not in favour of the Crusades because they were Christian holy wars, but I am interested in the ideas that were associated with the Knights Templar and the Grail legend. And I'm also interested in the Knights Templar because there is a loose connection between the Knights Templar and Freemasonry. From what I have researched over the years, it does not seem to be a direct connection. But from what I can tell about what I know about Freemasonry, it looks to me that the Freemasonry movement is based on ideas of the Knights Templar. So I wanted to mention that because a lot of people can read different books and think, oh, you know, is Freemasonry directly connected with the Knights Templar? Well, no, not from what I can tell. Not from my own research, and also my grandfather was a Freemason as well. Now to show some of the cards. So, the first one is called the Grail Seeker for the Fool card. You can see the Grail at the top of the card. And the interesting thing about these cards as well is with the Major Arcana cards, they all join up to form an artistic picture or frieze. So you could do that with these Major Arcana cards if you wish. So this is the Grail Seeker for the Fool. And it does explain in the book, there's a chart to show the names of the cards that have changed and the equivalent with the Major Arcana names of the usual tarot. I love this one. The Gnostic Christ for the Magician card. And when I first saw this deck, I bought it soon after it was available in 2007. I didn't really use this deck very much, and I think it was because I had ambivalent feelings about the Christian association. But because I have found out more in recent times about Gnostic Christianity, and this is called the Gnostic Christ, now this makes me more interested in this deck. So here is the Gnostic Christ for the Magician. And this is Sheba, which is the Queen of Sheba for the Empress card. So I quite like that idea. King Solomon for the Emperor. The art in the deck is quite beautiful. I know that there was a later deck by John Matthews about the Cathars, but I prefer this deck, not only because of the artwork, but I like the ideas and the concepts in this deck. I prefer this one. So this is Solomon for the Emperor. Fortune's Wheel for the Wheel of Fortune. So the artwork is so good in this deck, it's a bit like early Renaissance art. It's really well done. Now the numbering of the arcana, the major arcana in this deck, the only difference is this is numbered like a Thoth deck or a Marseille. This has number 8, which would be justice, and 11, which would be strength. So number 11 for the strength card, this is the Shekinah. And this is a Middle Eastern concept which is connected with Kabbalah. So this is really interesting. I like this. And I love this card too. Number 15, which would be the devil. This is Lucifer, who in conventional Christianity is looked at as a fallen angel, but in Gnosticism is seen as the light bearer. Lucifer means light. So I love this card. For Lucifer, which would normally be the devil card. And then for the tower, the fall of the temple. There's cracks in the background of the building. Now the temple in this deck is really the Temple of Solomon, which the Knights Templar guarded in the Middle East when they were there for the Crusades. And the Temple of Solomon is connected with the ideas of Freemasonry as well. So you can see a connection there. The fall of the temple for Tower card. And what would normally be the Judgment card, this is the Restoration, which is the restoration of the Grail. You can see the Grail vessel in the card, and the restoration of the temple, the rebuilding of the temple. Now to show the minor arcana, they've been renamed a little bit as well. The wands are called lances in this deck. So this is one of lances, which is the ace, and the lance is here. The minors are a bit more difficult to follow because the scenes for each of the cards are not easily recognisable as they normally would be in a tarot deck. So that's why I see this more as a study deck, and it makes a very interesting study deck. So one of lances, two of lances, and the court cards have been renamed a bit too. This is the Master of Lances, which would be the king. And in this deck, the queens are called ladies, and they have a higher ranking than the masters or kings. So this is the Master of Lances. And the cups are called vessels, as in the Grail vessel. So here is the One of Vessels. And the building all surrounds in these cards is really representing Solomon's temple. So One of Vessels. Ten of Vessels, which would be the Ten of Cups. And the Preceptor of Vessels, which is the Knight. That's the Preceptor of Vessels. Now for the swords. Here's the One of Swords. And with the swords suit, most of the scenes are depicting scenes of various scenes of war and battles, because this is about the Knights Templar who were involved in the Crusades. So One of Swords. Three of Swords. So this is the Wounded Knight and the sorrow of the wounded knight. Three of Swords. And this is Brother of Swords. The brothers in the deck are the pages. So people would normally look at this and say, well, that looks like a knight, which is the preceptor. But this is the Brother of Swords, which is the page. And of course, all of the ideas about the cards are in the book. There is information about each of the cards. So this is why this deck really has to be used with the book. So Brother of Swords. And now for stones, which would normally be the pentacles. And this is interesting too. This is the One of Stones, and in this deck, because they have borrowed ideas of alchemy in here, this is the green Philosopher's Stone. And the green stone, or the Philosopher's Stone, is linked to the Grail legend and as well as alchemy. So that's very interesting. So that's one of stones. Three of stones. And Master of Stones, which would be the King, with the green Philosopher's Stone in the card. So there's some of the cards of the Grail Tarot by John Matthews and illustrated by Giovanni Caselli. And I'll put the details below the video, and I hope you enjoyed seeing those cards. And it is a really interesting study deck. It would not be a good first tarot or tarot for beginners because it is quite different with the names of the cards being changed and with the scenes on the cards not easily recognisable compared with a conventional tarot. But I think it is a really interesting deck and it's very well done. And for people who are interested in the Grail legend and Gnostic Christianity and alchemy, any of those things, they might want to consider this deck. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.